This Welcome to 24 Hours of Past Summit Preview 2015. We're excited you could join us today for Russ Thomas's session, Stress, Inoculation, Maintaining Performance Under Pressure. This 24 Hours of Past event consists of 24 consecutive live webcasts delivered by expert speakers from the PASS community. This session is a preview of one of the many technical sessions that will be presented at PASS Summit in October of this year. Recordings will be available in 1 week at 24hoursofpass.com. My name is Charlene Ney. I have been a database administrator for 17 years. And I have a few quick introduction slides before I hand the reins over to Russ Thomas. He will speak for 45 minutes, and then we'll move on to Q&A where you can ask him questions that you may have. If you have any questions or if you're experiencing any technical issues, just type your question into the question pane on the GoWebinar control panel and someone will assist you. Feel free to enter your question in the Q&A field at any time. Once we get to the Q&A portion of the session, I will read off your question to the speaker. Since all attendees are muted, you will need to submit your question by typing it in the Q&A field. Also, there will be a short evaluation at the end of the session. Your feedback is very important to us, so please take a moment to complete it. It will appear in your browser. 24 Hours of Pass would not be possible without the support and dedication of our sponsors. They are the reason this event is available to you free of charge. I'd like to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsors, Microsoft, Dell Software, and Idera. In addition, I'd also like to thank the supporting sponsors for this event, HP, SQL Sentry, and Pyramid Analytics. Next, I'd like to bring your attention to the upcoming PASS Summit, taking place in Seattle, Washington from October 27th to the 30th. PASS Summit 2015 will feature over 200 sessions with world-class SQL Server experts. They're planned and presented by SQL Server community for the SQL Server community. PASS Summit is single-handedly the largest gathering of SQL Server and BI professionals in the world. With over 5,000 registrants from all over the world, PASS Summit is also a great place to network and meet face-to-face with experts, peers, and MPVs. More importantly, PASS Summit delivers on providing you with the answer to your SQL Server issues, along with knowledge, strategies, and skills you need to stay ahead of the curve. Save $200 right now by using the discount code 24HOP15 when you register. Optimization of your savings by registering before the end of Sunday, September 20th. To find out more, go to passsummit.com. Make sure you explore everything PASS has to offer for the data professional. You can join local user groups around the world with virtual chapters, find free online resources through our Learning Center, and read up the latest community news in the Connect newsletter. For those interested in the business analytics, check out the PASS Business Analytics Conference happening in May of next year. Visit passbaconference.com for more information or to subscribe to our BI Weekly BA Insight newsletter. Now allow me to present the speaker of the hour, Russ Thomas. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so like she said, this is a preview session, and so I would encourage you all to come to my session at PASS. That will be a little bit longer, there'll be a little bit more involved, and there'll be lots of fabulous prizes. So like she said, my name is Russ Thomas, and before I became a full-time DBA, and then recently I've transitioned into management, but don't tell my boss, but I still try to be a production DBA as much as I can. Before all that, I actually spent about 10 years in law enforcement. And so that's where a lot of the background and resources and preparation for this slide came from. And when I was preparing some submissions for PASS, they actually had a few items that they said were specifically looking for speakers who may know something about one of these topics. And one of the topics was stress management and performing under pressure, performing under stress. And when I was with the sheriff's office, I was a training sergeant, and we actually did a variety of things in that. So I submitted, and lo and behold, that's what got picked. So glad you're here, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learned something from it. And so let's get on to the topic. This is stress inoculation. And you're going to come to find out what exactly I mean by inoculation, hopefully throughout this, and hopefully you leave with some things that you can implement right now that can reduce your stress right now. In addition to having a background in law enforcement, I am a Microsoft certified solutions expert in data platform, and I'm also a Pluralsight author. If you reach out to me on Twitter at sequeljudo.com, or Twitter at sequeljudo, or the web sequeljudo.com, I'm happy to send you a free subscription to Pluralsight. So you could get on there and try it out for free for a while, and it's completely wide open access. So please reach out to me if you want some free access to Pluralsight. So stress, I think, probably has a lot of different definitions for a lot of different people, especially based on our life experiences. But if you flip it open in like WebMD or Wikipedia, a lot of them kind of come down to a more scientific definition and identify stress as a natural reaction to demanding events for which our resources to cope or react are low. And that's really what it comes down to. Stress is what builds when our ability to cope or react to all the demands are low. Now, there are all kinds of categories of stress. This course is going to be focused on acute stress, because acute stress is the kind of stress that is most easily cured through inoculation. So when you ask me, what is acute stress? Well, acute stress is the type of stress that is related to a low-frequency, high-liability event. Now, there's definitely other kinds of acute stress. So, for example, this guy right here, he is experiencing acute stress. Probably not many of us in our lives have been called upon to grab a fire extinguisher and do something. That's a low-frequency, high-liability event. The only reason we're carrying around a fire extinguisher is because really important things are on fire. So this person right here is definitely experiencing acute stress. This person is also experiencing acute stress, also hopefully a low-frequency, high-liability event. They're both experiencing acute stress. I would argue that the one on the right is probably experiencing a little bit more acute stress. And when you look at it in terms of resources, the guy on the right is probably going to run out of resources to deal with his form of acute stress sooner than the guy on the left. So that is what this course is focused on. We are going to first identify some acute stressors that might be particular to you in your career, and then probably most of you have already been through some sort of Psych 101 class in college or high school, so we're going to just briefly hit fight or flight, but it's going to be like one slide. And then we're going to talk about how fight or flight leads to resource exhaustion. Resource exhaustion, which is the culminating point of acute stress, then leads to ineffective ways of managing with that lack of resources and ineffective ways to deal with stress. We'll contrast that with effective ways to deal with stress, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time actually talking about stress inoculation, which has two aspects. We can prevent stress altogether, and we can be much more effective at dealing with stress and stressful situations, and both of those lead us to being more effective professionals. We have a class exercise, but if you come to the live session at PASS, it's going to be a much more involved class exercise, and like I said, will involve prizes. And then we'll follow it up with questions and answers. But the bulk of our time, hopefully, is on the point of this course, inoculation. So what are some acute stressors for each of you individually? Probably a lot of that depends on what your job title is. Are you a DBA? Are you a production DBA? Are you a developer that has to deal with deadlines or potentially has to deal with bugs that come up in production that, you know, the production DBAs try to blame on you? This is pretty much what this slide shows. It's a blank slide because each of you would probably fill in each of these bullets individually differently with your own acute stressors. And you would have to honestly sit down and say, what are the things that scare me the most, that stress me the most, that keep me up at night? And this list would be made up of those items. But, you know, to throw out some examples, a server crash on a server that is supposed to be 5.9 that you as a DBA are responsible for keeping online, and it goes down, and you're not really sure why it went down. And suddenly in your cube, you have a CIO, you have you know, maybe a business executive, and maybe 2 or 3 network people, and they're all looking at you. The CIO might even be barking and yelling about how much money we're losing, and everyone expects you to get this database server back online. That is definitely an acute stressor. So, when we experience stress, it's our body's natural reaction to either fight or flight. Now, flight, in the case of a professional career, I guess would be running from the building screaming. Probably not an appropriate response unless your life truly is in danger. So we're just going to kind of ignore flight, you know, but they sound so good together, fight or flight. You can't have a slide that has one and not the other. But fight is where you tackle the problem. Whatever it is that is causing that acute stress, you go. Way back at the first slide, you grab the fire extinguisher. Or if you're the guy on fire, stop, drop, and roll, man. So there is an equal asset to this fight or flight response as there is an equal liability. The asset might be something like, it's your natural reaction. Why is that an asset? Well, because it just happens. You don't have to think about it. You don't stew about it. Bam, you go. Liability, of course, would be it's the default reaction. There might be a better option. You didn't pick it because it wasn't what came to you naturally. The asset might be increased focus. You are able to tune out distractions and really focus on what it is that you need to solve. The liability, however, is reduced awareness. It might keep you from noticing other things that are contributing to the problem. In the technical world, what if I am completely focused on why a database won't come online, and I am so focused on the SQL Server service that I don't even consider that maybe my SAN is offline. This actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago. And luckily for me, I had a fellow DBA that said, hey, Russ, there's no drives in Windows Explorer. There are no drives whatsoever. Oh, well, obviously, that's why our SQL Server won't come online. But I had tunnel vision. An asset of fight is increased energy. The liability, however, is that that increased energy is pretty short-lived. It's very physically and mentally demanding. So you run out quick, and then you might not be much use to anyone once that resource is exhausted. And kind of in line with the first one, decreased hesitation. You are ready to act. You may you know, pull a cowboy move that in your right mind you would never do. And if it was the right response, hey, you know, you may get a raise and a pat on the back. But if it was the incorrect response, you may just have made the situation worse. So I liken it to, and I apologize here, I am a huge World War II aviation buff. If you could see my home office and my home basement, I look like a 12-year-old kid with like models hanging from the ceiling and pictures on the wall. So I liken fight or flight to a setting that many World War II airplanes had, which was referred to as war emergency power. And it was a way to force the airplane to perform at a level much higher than it was intended to perform at. It was very effective when you had no other option. However, really hard on the machinery and could cause unpredictable results. But when you had no other option, you needed to pull out of a dive that was going to end your life. You needed to, catch up to an enemy plane that might be poised and ready to take down one of your squad members. You could use this. Now, World War II mechanics had very strict rules that when war emergency power had been implemented, they had very long checklists that they had to go through, and in many cases they would rebuild the entire engine and struts and everything on an airplane after it had used war emergency power. Operating in fight or flight is kind of like that. It's not really healthy to always be in there. It can lead to very quick resource exhaustion from a physical and a mental perspective, and these are resources where you're not able to think about what you should do. You're not able to focus on what you should do. You're easily slipping into a state where you're just kind of frozen, and that is what happens when you have resource exhaustion. So we're going to talk a lot in this course about how do we build up our resources so we have a much deeper well of resources to rely on. Now, there's a guy by the name of Jeff Cooper. He is also from World War II and Korean War era. He was a Marine, and he came up with what have been come to known in law enforcement and military circles as the Cooper scale of awareness. And it is broken down into colors: white, yellow, orange, red. Black wasn't one of his original colors, but it has since been added. Jeff Cooper, this guy's, if you're into military, this guy's somebody to know about. He's also became one of the most premier pistol shooter Marine Corps trainers that they had. But the way he breaks down resources in this kind of concept of resources that you might need in a high stress situation is this. White is oblivious. You are completely unaware to what's going on. You have no awareness. You may even be asleep. You could imagine the danger a soldier would find themselves in if combat found them asleep. So that's white. Yellow is you may be focused on an individual task, but you're relaxed. You may not necessarily be aware of anything else other than this very simple task that you're working on. Orange is where you start to get into levels of awareness where you are really hyper aware. And this is the type of awareness where law enforcement, paramedics, firefighters, military, and people who are really highly effective, this is kind of the awareness level that they constantly operate at. This can get very tiresome. Ask a police officer who just put in a 12-hour shift and has been hyper aware for all 12 hours. It is very mentally exhausting. However, not quite as exhausting as red. Red is fully engaged. You are restoring a backup. You are saving your company millions of dollars. You are bringing corrupted files back from the brink of complete extinction. Red is the top level. All your focus, this is fight or flight in action. And then once all resources are exhausted, black. And black is best illustrated by the famous Tennessee fainting goat. It goes completely unresponsive. It locks up, it has no more answers, and it has become ineffective. Don't confuse black with white. Black is a result of overload. White, frankly, I think most of us would like to be white more often. So what does all of that have to do with being an IT professional, and specifically an IT professional in a career such as database administration or anything that is high stress in the business world? Well, understanding these awareness levels helps you to avoid ineffective methods of managing stress, which I kind of define as your work life bounces between white and red. You're constantly bouncing between completely oblivious, and unaware, you're asleep at your desk, to, red, the server's going down, we need you, klaxons are going off, your CIO is tearing $100 bills on top of your desk to show you as a symbol of how much money you're losing in the company, and there's really nothing in between. Yellow, when it comes up, you're really only saving that for lunch decisions only. That's when you are going to be task focused. It's like, wow, do I want fast food, or am I more in the mood for Mexican today? Orange is avoided at all costs because it's kind of, it's taxing. We only go into red because other people force us there. Orange, we don't want to be there. And when we do go into red, quite often we slip into black where we have no answers. And then the cycle starts over. This type of stress management ultimately will probably lead to forms of, questionable moral choices, things that just aren't healthy for your life. So how do we solve and improve all of this? Well, effective stress management would look something more like this. We're going to avoid white at work. White, you save that for home. You save that for when you're kicking out watching the TV or when you're just asleep, taking a nap. Avoid that at work. Operate daily in the yellow. Be deliberate about your decisions, deliberate about your choices. And most importantly, you're going to pre-plan those operations in the orange. If you are going to apply patches, you're going to have a plan. What if they don't apply? What if the failover doesn't work? Are my backups staged and ready? Because pre-planning operations in the orange can help you avoid slipping into the red. And that is what we want to do. We want to minimize time in the red because red is really destructive to our resources. It can be even destructive to our self-confidence. Those items that quite often are red for us, we can turn to orange through practicing inoculation, which is where we're headed. And black will also be avoided through inoculation. Now that's not to say that we can get rid of red entirely, but hopefully we can keep red from turning to black. So, two categories to effective stress management. The first three are preventative in nature, avoiding white at work, operating daily in the yellow, and pre-planning operations in the orange. These are preventative. This helps us be fluid and organized at work. We're not caught off guard, and we have plenty of resources if we're fully functioning adults with a decent amount of career knowledge. We're perfectly capable of operating all day long, 40, 50, 60-hour week at these levels. The other three elements of effective stress management are where we really get into the inoculation, where we want to minimize our time in the red, where as much as possible we turn red activities into orange through inoculation and we avoid black. So, why do we stay out of the white? Because it's very shallow. When you get woken up in the middle of the night with, oh my gosh, the servers are all down and you need to fix it in 60 seconds, well, it's going to take you more than 60 seconds just to remember where you put your laptop so that you could remote into the server. Why do we operate daily in the yellow? Because then we're not doing stupid mistakes. When we're deliberate, we reduce those ID10T errors, also known as mistakes made by idiots. And if you have any kind of career in IT, we've all been there. Pre-planning operations in orange, this is where it's at. If you can pre-plan your operations, you can take a dry run, you can have a checklist where you go through all of your items. Orange is going to be about as stressful as yellow, frankly, because you have done a dry run, you've done a practice. When you think of the military, why is it that the military focuses so much on push-ups and pull-ups and disassembling a rifle? You know, the famous scene from Forrest Gump where he breaks down a rifle, puts it back together, breaks down a rifle, puts it back together, and his sergeant comes in and says, "Dang it, Gump, why did you assemble that rifle so fast?" And Forrest Gump's answer is, "Because you told me to, sir." That's beautiful. He had made assembling that rifle so smooth and so automatic, he didn't even have to think about it. What if a database went down and you could restore a backup, restore a bunch of logs, do a point-in-time recovery without even having to think about it? Well, that is exactly why the military does that. Imagine yourself in a combat situation where you are actively fighting the enemy and you have a weapons malfunction. You are operating on such slim resources as it is, you can't afford to dedicate some of those resources to doing something that could have been inoculated ahead of time. By inoculating that perfect understanding of how the weapon works, how to take it apart, how to fix something, how to put it back together, where you can do it without even thinking, you can keep those limited resources focused on other much more important and much less predictable things that catch you off guard. So, how do we do that in our jobs? First, we want to build our resource pool. We build our resource pool by preemptive training. Attending PASS is a perfect example. You can go in and learn about things that you don't even get a chance to work with at work, but hey, your career is a fluid thing. Maybe someday you want to. You build your resource pool by demanding that if you are in a production environment where you are likely to get yelled at if production goes down, that you have a test environment that is like production where you can test scenarios. When I was in law enforcement, every Tuesday at our shift briefing, we had what was called Tactical Tuesday. And we would go through one by one as a team and identify interesting, what I said at the beginning, low frequency, high liability events that we had experienced throughout the week. It might be, handcuffing a person and they pulled a weapon, or searching a car and you found some sort of dangerous item, or things that caught you off guard. And by sharing that as a team, we could individually debrief what had happened, and the entire team could build our resource pool based off the experiences of one team member. And a lot of times, really odd things came up that we never would have been able to predict before, but by breaking it down and thinking it through, and even when possible, practicing it, it did a tremendous amount of building your own confidence in your own ability to respond to unpredictable events. Now, those things that you can predict, that is where you have to do repetitive exercises. I can guarantee you, if you are a production DBA, at some point in your career, you are going to have to restore a database from backup. And if it's a production database, there's going to be a lot of pressure on you. People are going to be yelling. So take the time ahead of time to get really good at that. Get to where it's almost automatic, where you could be Forrest Gump saying, your CIO comes in and says, "Dang, why did you restore that database so fast?" "Because you told me to, sir." Oh, that would be perfect. There are some things that maybe you don't even have to think about at all. What if there was a script that could solve something you could predict, and all you had to do was run the script? Now, you would have to know ahead of time that the script was a perfect match for the problem, and that the problem had a script, but you can do that ahead of time. Ola Hallengren was one of the original pioneers of scripts that just became viral. Everybody wanted these things because they were so perfect and so beautiful. Well, there's a lot of folks out there who have made very common and in some cases very complex tasks, but they've built them into scripts that are easy for you to acquire. So you have all of these in a script library, but in the heat of fight or flight, do you know which scripts are appropriate for which situations? Or if you brought up a script, would you feel comfortable running it in production when it is, 400, 500, 600 lines long, and you don't really know what 598 of those lines do? You just kind of know what the first line does because that's the only one you can see in the query window. So even if you have a really extensive script library, practice pulling those scripts up and applying them to individual situations. And know what all those scripts do and trust them. I don't care if they came from a Brent Ozar or an Adam Mechanic. If you don't know what it does and you don't understand what it does, even if that's a trusted person that it came from, you could definitely apply it in the wrong situation, I guess is what I was trying to say. So build up your script library, but don't do it kind of like a 10-year-old kid collects Pokemon cards. You know, you have all these scripts, but you don't really know what any of them mean or do. You know, of course, there's probably a lot of 10-year-old kids who know exactly what all their Pokemon cards do, so maybe that was a terrible analogy. But rely on those community resources, pull those script libraries, build your resource pool, but you are responsible for understanding them and for being able to use them in appropriate situations under stress. Another thing you can do to build your resource pool is manage expectations. If you Sorry, I think I might have just okay, I think I'm back. So managing expectations, please, a moderator, reach out to me if no one can hear me. But managing expectations. Sorry, my little console here is making me nervous. Okay. See, this is a stressful situation right here. How do I work with GoToMeeting when I have a bunch of people watching and I'm only halfway through my presentation? But managing expectations comes down to, does your boss know what your responsibilities are and isn't going to try and hold you accountable to things that aren't your responsibility? And further, have you told the truth in what your capabilities are? Now, this can be in a job that you've had for a very long time. It can also be in a job that you're interviewing for. If you go in and you really want a job, and you kind of stretch the truth about what your capabilities and what your knowledge is, well, when it comes time and the pressure is on and you have to demonstrate things that others expect you to have, I can guarantee you that that stress level is going to be significantly higher than it should. You can get so much further by just simply telling the truth. Even in a job you already have, when you go in, be honest with your boss. Say, hey, boss, I know we spent $500,000 on a DR system. I have about 20% confidence that it would actually work if we had a true DR scenario. And here's why. If they are any kind of decent manager, they are going to totally appreciate that sort of heads up. What they're not going to appreciate is when the phone call goes off that a building went down or a power outage occurred or a hurricane blew through and you have to bring up a remote data center. And in your heart of hearts, you know it's only got about a 20% chance, but you never told anybody. That is stressful. So be honest. People really like that. Trust me. Now, so that is building your resource pool. Stress inoculation is also about protecting your resource pool. Be organized. Have those script libraries in a place that's easy to access, that they're categorized, that they're quick to go through. Have company standards and standards for your databases. If you are responsible for the backups and the restores, then you need to take ownership of what those standards are. And by this, I mean if you have a 5 terabyte business critical database and you are responsible for ensuring that that 5 terabyte business critical database could go completely offline and then be restored from scratch in under an hour, you might want to really make sure that you can accomplish that, especially if it's under the simple recovery mode, because you may not. So if you are going to be held responsible for something, take ownership of that. Now, I am a huge fan of checklists when other people write them. Writing your own checklist, I get it. It's tedious. Okay, I'm going to build a cluster. So building a cluster requires that I identify all these addresses, that I identify these virtual names, that I make sure these ports are open. I know it gets old. However, once you have that checklist, and then it comes time on a maintenance weekend when you're able to take a node offline and then bring another node up, you don't find out about 2 a.m. Sunday night that you have to call off the whole thing because you forgot like 5 different things. And I've been there too, you know, going back to telling the truth. When you have a checklist that you have vetted in a test environment and you can go through, it's that automated response. Speaking of automation, why on earth would you write 50 lines of T-SQL when you could automate? 50 lines of T-SQL and know that it is going to be perfect. If you had to write 50 lines of T-SQL right now, and I said, I will give you $100 if you can do it in under 60 seconds without a single error, a single mistype. You know, you got the pressure of having to earn that $100. You also have a time limit. So right now, your pressure is going to be high. Could you do it? What if I said, hey, run this automated script. It's already pre-written for you. You still have the same 60 seconds. No big deal, right? And now, if you are lucky enough to work with a team of DBAs, which some of you are, I personally am, and I have a great bunch of peers, peer review your checklists, your standards, your script libraries. Set aside time on a regular basis to do nothing but build up your preemptive resources. If you have management that doesn't think that this is valuable, educate them better. You know, send them to me. By all means, have them reach out to me. I'm a manager. I can put it into dollars and cents for them. If you are a lone DBA, which I have been in previous positions, well, you still have the past network, and frankly, it is incredible. I don't know of any technical community on earth that is as open and as sharing as the SQL Server and specifically the past community. So take advantage of it. You also protect your resource pool by communication, and then there's identifying the distractions. If you are in that unfortunate situation where you have a production outage and klaxons are going off, and you have the CIO, the CEO, 2 other business people, the security folks, and a network engineer all in your cube screaming about how you need to get a server back up. Identify that distraction, and if you need to take a moment and say, guys, I have a lot of work to do, I have a lot of things that are going to require a lot of my focus, I am happy to let you yell at me. Can you yell at me after I'm done restoring this database? Most people, if they are reasonable, will recognize when they are being a distraction, even if they outrank you, and they'll respect you for it. Don't be afraid to make that statement. If they're unreasonable, you know what, it may pay good, but do you really want to work in that kind of environment where they are that completely unreasonable? So this is really, it's kind of that simple. Stress inoculation comes from building a resource pool and then protecting that resource pool as much as you can so that in that low frequency, high liability event, you can perform to your best and you don't fade into black. Wouldn't it be awesome if the most stressful thing you focused on throughout a week, throughout a month, throughout a year, never even really made it out of the orange? Now that's the kind of career I want. And here's one little final thing I'd like to give you. I love Steve Jones, and I was at a session of his once, and he was talking about, you know, the stressful pressure of being a production DBA in a multi-million-dollar organization. And he said, you know, when it comes down to it, very, very, very few of us are saving babies. Very, very few of us have lives on the line for these decisions. So sometimes it's also healthy to just take a breath and recognize, hey, this isn't the end of the world. Even if this server doesn't come back online, is someone going to die? Now, I hate to say it, but there are career fields that the answer might be yes. Career fields in health or very tactical fields such as law enforcement, military. But that is why they put so much emphasis on that inoculation so that you can perform your best. And ultimately, it's the real world. It's not perfect. Bad things happen, even to good people. So this is the point where, if this were a live class, we would all together do a couple of different exercises, and I would have some handouts for you. So that's why I say I would love for you to attend my live presentation, even though you've sat through this. And in fact, you may get a step up on winning some of the prizes. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through my own demo. But I kind of want you to place yourself mentally and emotionally in the position that I'm going to describe for you. So let me get all set up here, and here we go. let's say, hold on here. I already have it up. Let's say this is your production database server. And Abacos Widgets is a company in the Abacos Islands that makes widgets, multi-million dollars. This is the best job you ever had. You love this job. It pays amazing, and you wouldn't want to work anywhere else. Also, you have a family that requires the paycheck that this job provides. And then one of your coworkers, for reasons that you really haven't had time to identify yet, comes in and first deletes all the backup history for the primary production database, takes the database offline by putting it into single user mode, and then the coup de grace drops it. So let's just do that. Bam. Abacos Widgets is gone. It's off the map. So immediately you are in that scenario. Klaxons are going off. CIO is running down the hall screaming, why have all of our systems gone offline? Why are our customers calling in? Why can't manufacturing look up whatever they need to look up? And you immediately realize that the database is gone. And your CIO makes the statement, Mister, you've got less than 5 minutes to get that database back exactly the way it was, or you, my friend, are going to be looking for a new job. Hopefully you don't work in that kind of environment, but as you could imagine, that would be a very stressful situation. So I'm going to make it a little bit easier on you in that just last week you were practicing some restores and you have on hand a database restore script that will apply the most recent full backup. So very quickly you run that. A big part of your job is now done, right? You have maybe years worth of data restored. But you still have a whole bunch of log backups to apply. Clock is running. You're trying to remember where your log backups are even stored. Okay, here they are. No cheating. Nobody saw me do that. That was from a prior run of mine. Me getting ready for this presentation. Okay, I've got to get all these log backups restored. The clock is ticking. I've got exactly 3 minutes left. Okay, hornets are in my head. How do I get these logs restored? So take a minute. It's on you now. Would you be able to get all these transaction logs restored in the database all caught up in under 3 minutes? Well, if you had practiced such scenarios ahead of time, which mark my words, if you are a production DBA, at some point you're going to have to restore a production database on short notice, very likely with a whole lot of transaction logs that will need to be applied after the most recent full. Just last week I did this, and the number of logs that I had to apply were in the hundreds of logs that I had to apply. So I've practiced this, and I've timed myself doing it a variety of different ways. If this caught me completely off guard, the way not to do it would be to come in here and say, okay, remember, people are in my cube yelling, restore database, what's the name of the database? Oh yeah, Abacos Widgets. What's that syntax? Is it from file? No, it's not from file. Is it from disk? Or is it from at disk? Oh wait, no. I'm pretty sure it's disk equals. You see where I'm going. This could be very stressful. But having practiced. Okay, I have a list of files. I want that list of files in a query window. How do I get a list of files in a query window? Well, one thing I could do is I could use an old DOS trick of going dir/order by date, so that gives me a directory in order of date, and then I could pipe all that results out to a file name called file list.sql. What does that do, you ask? Well, now that I have a list of all the files in that directory, I've just saved myself a bunch of time typing. If I know the Alt-Shift trick of SQL Server Management Studio, I can copy this block of files out like that. I can come back over to my other file like this, and I can paste those all in there. And then I can take that I typed, and I can do the old Alt-Shift trick again and paste that in front of all of those lines, and then go out to the end and Alt-Shift mouse trick again and close it out. I don't want to close it out. I want to say with no recovery because we are restoring logs, and also these are file names, but I need the paths as well, so I could put in F backups log. Now, I know the Alt-Shift trick where I can type on multiple lines at once, I can paste in multiple lines at once, and I can copy out columns of data. So right now, and that was probably roughly just under 3 minutes, I am ready to apply all those log backups. Now, trust me, this would work. But what if I was even smarter and I said, instead of doing it that way, what if I knew that at some point in my career I was going to be called upon to restore all the log backups that were in a folder? Wouldn't it be a whole lot easier if I just had, oh, I don't know, say a PowerShell script that I named log folder restore. And this PowerShell script would read all the files in the folder, and it would loop through those individually after having been put in order of creation time, and it would even check to make sure that it had the right extension, because what if I had a full backup file in that folder, or if I had other files in that folder? And then it would invoke a SQL command that would restore all those one by one. Well, let's do that. I mean, my first way was pretty cool, and it definitely potentially could have gotten me there in under 3 minutes. But if I'm ready and I have a script that I can run right from the command line, and first I'm going to say import module SQL PS to make sure that this can run SQL. And then I'm going to paste in that very script and run it, and it's done. It's all restored. And now I come over here and I just say restore database Abacus widgets with recovery to bring it online. Bam, database is back. So ask yourself, which one would you rather do with your job on the line? Would you rather have to think about, okay, how do I do this? Where do I find those files? Once I find those files, how am I going to apply them each individually, each in order to make sure that they all have a with no recovery clause? Or would you rather be prepared with some techniques like I did in the T-SQL attempt? Well, okay, I know I can Alt-Shift and I can type on multiple lines at once. I know a quick DOS trick that can get me all those file names in one block. Or even better, would you rather just have a script on hand that will apply all the log backups in a folder, one script, bam, done? It's pretty obvious what the question is, and I can tell you which one is the least stressful. Especially, which something I wasn't quite expecting was being on stage here in front of a live audience, me doing that myself. I can tell you the last one was the least stressful. Why? Less typing. So that is stress inoculation. I wish I had some sort of magic yoga that you could do. I wish that there was some primal chants that I could give you. And believe me, there are really effective ways to manage life stress that involve, you know, some really interesting things. I encourage you to go out and take an interest in your own stress levels and in your own life-work balance and in your own health. If you want to avoid acute stress, however, you do that through inoculation, And like the Boy Scouts say, it's really comes down to just being prepared, being organized, and having a method and a plan to get you through even the most random of events. So that's the presentation. I'm going to turn this back over to our moderator.
Well, thank you very much. We had a, well, it really wasn't a question, it was a statement, and they said thank you for the Alt-Shift trick. They didn't know it. And I just recently learned it myself.
I tell you
So
what, once I found that trick, I use that so flipping often. It's amazing how often I want to do a copy paste of a column block as opposed to a set of lines. Yeah, so hold down Alt-Shift and then just click with your mouse like you normally would, or move around with your arrows. It'll be your favorite thing about Management Studio.
I've used a lot of shortcuts. It's nice. I really do. I've known you many years. Does anybody else have any other questions or any statements? What resources would you recommend for someone in a chronic stress situation?
You have to figure out what de-stresses you, and it is definitely different for everyone. And this is speaking from experience from my law enforcement past. Some people get de-stressed by exercise. Other people has totally the opposite effect on it. It's just like one more thing to do, and they just get de-stressed by zoning out in front of the TV. I think mentally, you'll know you're close when it's something that helps you not think about that chronic stressful environment. I really got into rock climbing and mountain biking when I was in law enforcement because it was something that required so much focus, it was easy to forget about anything else I was stressing out about. And just that downtime where your mind can kind of get out of that repetitive, piling on of stress, I think is the most helpful. With that said, I think that there's a lot of great resources out there, and as a human, don't be afraid to admit when you're just overwhelmed and you need some external resources.
The next question is, what if you find yourself constantly thinking of improvements that can be made when you're away from the office? What would you do?
Well, so you just described me. And I have had that conversation with my boss many times, and early, especially in my current position, early on, it was so frustrating to me because I recognized all these improvements, but I never had the time to actually implement them. And what it came down to is I just had to accept that there's a priority of things, and sometimes I just had to say, you know what, I realize this is on my to-do list. I have a much more important thing to do, and get your boss to understand that this improvement has long-term benefit, long-term payoff. There's a balancing act there because you have to really sell it. Your boss is, especially if they themselves are not a technical person, which I've worked for non-technical people before, and they have a harder time understanding why going to pass or why building up a script library is critical. I would sit them down and do some sort of exercise like I just did. Go through a log restore and say, do you want me at 2 a.m. with our most critical business asset cowboying this in from scratch, or do you want me doing this a more methodical way? And then use that as an analogy. This is what I'm talking about with regards to clustering, or with regards to this budget ask that I'm putting in for a failover server or a test environment. You know what I mean? But ultimately, if they hold the strings to the purse, you can make your best pitch. But we all work for somebody.
It's true. From Matt Penny, he's asking, do you have any recommendations for organization or organizing your scripts? I've got loads but struggle to remember which is which.
So recently, I'm not an expert in this, but I have become fascinated with the Git repository that script and code developers have been using for a while. I find more and more people in the SQL Server community putting their script libraries out on Git? And if that is an excellent question, and that is going to be my next blog post, is where to manage a script library, because that is an excellent question. Git is a place to put it online so that if you're at home, you're at work, you're wherever, you have access, as long as you have internet access. The other thing is SQL Server Management Studio itself. Let me switch over here real fast. Under templates, where is it? The Template Explorer. I know a lot of people who put their own scripts in here, right in SQL Server Management Studio under the Template Explorer. Now, Microsoft's already put a bunch of ones in here, like scripts for backing up, scripts for doing audits, scripts for doing whatever. But if you notice, I have one called the AAA Toolbox, and that's where I can dump queries I use all the time. This is actually here from a presentation I did on hidden tips and tricks of SQL Server Management Studio, which is another favorite session of mine. But you can fill this up, or you could even categorize them. Right-click and say New Folder, and you could categorize them under, clustering scripts or emergency scripts, or, and the nice thing about that is it's available whether you're online or not. But of course, this is specific to your local box, so it would have to be on your local installation of SSMS. Couple hints. That would be an interesting question for just the SQL community too. Put it out there on hashtag SQL help. How do you manage scripts? There's probably a million great ideas out there.
Okay, the last question that we've got time for is, how would you suggest to make our manager less stressful? How can I show them that there is no need to stress our team?
So a lot of that would have to come down to just an honest communication. Schedule a safe time when tension is low, like if you do review sessions, and just be honest and say, hey, look, here's the deal. Our job is stressful. Sometimes you make it more stressful, and here is some things that I wish you would do. Sometimes having a good relationship with a boss is like having a good relationship with anyone, with a family. It comes down to putting that out there. If they are not the kind of person that is receptive to feedback, I'm not sure what other options you have. Unfortunately, some of us just work in environments that are like that. But start there. And the key to having an open conversation like that, however, is also be ready for feedback the other way. Sometimes people feel better about receiving criticism when they feel like they're in a situation where they can also give criticism. And so if you are conducive to that, I think that goes a long way to helping them feel the same. And if you need to do it after hours, or I'll go out and hit a restaurant or something just to kind of put everyone at ease, do that too. But that's a tough situation. Some people just are not good at that. I feel like I'm a decent manager when it comes to putting stress on my team. I probably think my bosses above me wish that I put more stress on them and got more done. So it is a balancing act.
All the rest of the questions will be given to Russ after the presentation is completed. Thank you for attending Stress Inoculation, Maintaining Performance Under Pressure. I'd like to thank Russ for his time and his expertise. Again, I'd also like to thank our presenting sponsors, Microsoft Idera and Dell Software, and our supporting sponsors, Pyramid Analytics, SQL Sentry, and HP. I hope you enjoyed this session as much as I did. Follow along on social media with the @PASS24HOP and share your thoughts on the events with the hashtag PASS24HOP and hashtag SQLPass. I really appreciate all your information and your knowledge, Russ. Thank you.
Thank you. And like I said, reach out to me on Twitter and I will give you a free Pluralsight.